Hello, my loves, and welcome to the Kalisatra Pleasure Podcast. I'm your host, Katie. I'm a pleasure coach, a Tantra yoga teacher, and of course, a podcast host. And I am so excited for this episode. We have Pain and Pleasure with Rakhee Patel. Now, Rakhee is my dear sister, and she is also an empowerment coach and a somatic specialist. The wisdom that she shares in this podcast did not come out of a book, I can tell you that. She is incredibly powerful because she's worked for years and years on healing trauma, becoming used to pain, learning how to transmute pain into pleasure, not focusing too much on pain, learning to bring pleasure actively into your life. There's so many incredible topics or niches of this area that we dive into in this podcast. So absorb the goodness, and I would love for you to virtually feel the space that Rakhee creates. She really makes healing feel accessible to everyone, and she holds a space where you can just show up however you are. You can be sad, you can be playful, you can be a multidimensional being in her presence. And with that safety to just authentically share your truth, you can just really become a free soul. It's very liberating being around Rakhee or listening to her speak. So I highly recommend diving into this and taking yourself on that journey of self-discovery that Rakhee feels so passionate about. So enjoy, and you can always reach out to Rakhee and I for support in any of these areas if you need. There'll be all the details to contact us in the description. Enjoy! My dear sister Rakhee, I want to introduce everyone to this beautiful soul. And we're going to dive straight in. What does pleasure mean to you?
Yeah, pleasure means, and in that moment I think I was just experiencing it too, just meeting each moment with presence and truth. So not trying to necessarily change anything, just really meeting all of it with so much presence. And through that I feel, that's my experience of pleasure. Just meeting every sensation, emotion, thought with real presence. And through that brings about truth and clarity. Induces pleasure for me.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people are probably feeling that, how do I meet every single moment with that kind of pleasureful lens, because some things can feel really hard. So how do you sort of surrender to the pain when it comes, and why do you feel that's so important for pleasure?
So I think like everything is it is a journey, and you know, it wouldn't be truth to say that every moment is met with this pleasure and in pain. It's just that that's kind of the ultimate or the goal, and setting that intention more consistently helps me to do it. But it's forgiving myself and forgiving ourselves when we are in that moment of pain, and sometimes being present with that might not necessarily mean that you're thinking about how pleasurable it is, but because you're present and you're in it, there aren't really any thoughts, and that in itself is a form of pleasure, because we're not in the mind like overanalyzing, attaching, we're just in it, we've really bowed down to the pain. And I think it's, in answer to your question about why that's important, it's important to move in and through our emotions as opposed to avoiding them or repressing them, because whether we want to feel them or not, it's going to play out in one form or another. That's been my experience. So we may as well bow down, or it's going to play out in all of these passive ways.
I mean, I think the Buddhists put it really well, that the human conditioning is suffering. That doesn't mean that every single aspect of our life has to be an experience of suffering, but the reality is that that is going to be a part of it. And what I'm hearing you say, and what I feel as well, is that the more that we fight that pain and pretend it's not there, and don't surrender to it, that's actually where a lot of the mental anguish comes, because it's like, oh, why am I feeling this way? I should have done this, blah, 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 and we actually feed the pain and build it up more and more and more. Whereas when we just allow ourselves to completely surrender to it, it actually moves through us so much quicker.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear a little bit about your view on emotions moving through you and what that feels like for you.
Yeah. So I feel to relax a bit more on my legs there. I love this topic. I think, could you repeat that question about what the specifics around your question around the emotions?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to get to is this, when we feel emotions and we feel that moving through our body, I'm aware that you see that as energy moving through our body. And my question is that having that awareness of emotions just being energy moving through your body, how does that help you surrender to pain and also maybe experience pleasure?
Yeah, beautiful. I think even just the mantra, it's just a sensation, is so powerful, because when we can view it as energy, it naturally is going to move faster because we're getting out of our own way.
Yeah.
When we're trying to overanalyze it and we're up here, it's actually just delaying the process for the body to do its thing. And actually our bodies are so intelligent, like they're so capable and full of innate wisdom. So I feel that that's what supports the transmutation of emotion and the alchemization of it. Like I really believe that we're all alchemizers and we're all able to, transform and transmute. And it's that, I think it was Albert Einstein that said, energy can neither be created nor destroyed, only transformed into one form or another. And I think when the sensations in our body are moving through and we're just allowing that, we get to witness that in real time. But like you say, when we're trying to control it, we're actually just pushing it away further and the energy isn't doing its thing. And that it continues to fascinate me how clever our minds are and just how powerful we are, because actually we are able to choose whether to let go and surrender and have that alchemization process happen naturally, or we can actually hold on for all of our lives, and it manifests as illness in the body, as unhappiness, as resentment, ongoing rage at the world. And I think it's so priceless to learn those somatic tools to allow those sensations to flow.
Yeah. Just something I've been feeling into on that recently is, even in a lot of yogic practice or general spiritual practices, there's still this kind of trying to force negativity out of the body through release. And I've said it 1,000 times in classes where I've been, and release with the exhale, release the tension from your yoni, and realizing that that's still just a very forceful trying to push it out. And what we actually need to do is allow the energy to express itself in whatever way it wants to, and it will release in its own time when it feels that you've expressed enough, you've learnt a lesson from that energy being in your body, whatever reason, mystical reason that energy had for being in your body. We can't really just push it out. We can only express and just wait for it to do its thing. And I know that that is something that you do so incredibly, and it inspired me actually just to be so much more expressive, especially with sound. I think you're amazing at that. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you get pain out of your body without like actively trying to, and instead just express what you're feeling. Like how does that process work for you? How does it feel? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that question. I think it's, for me, like our inner child is our sage, and they say that the sage is, like a 5-year-old, because we're so connected to that innate wisdom and joy, but also the wild expression of the child. We're taught now in our adulthood, or as there's such a mass awakening and consciousness is evolving, a lot of this is about returning and remembering, and not just to our divinity, but also to the wisdom that our inner children hold, because they're not overthinking and they do just express. And for me, that's my guide. Like I have a picture of my 5-year-old self as the background on my phone, and I'm constantly going back to it. And even my partner and I, like, we've had an idea to get both of our baby pictures on the wall, because that is my biggest guide, like my greatest teacher, because she knows, she doesn't have to question how to work this stuff out. She just knows how to express. And, you know, the gift of having the adult consciousness is that we then know how to not project when we're wildly expressing, and we can bring that awareness in to be like, okay, there's energy here, and I might want to scream into a pillow, or release some somatic sounds and go outside and take myself away. But the energy that I feel my little girl would have been feeling is exactly the same in terms of how it's being expressed. It's just that with this adult consciousness and awareness, I don't need to project that. And if I do, in some moments it happens, we're all human, then I hope to bring awareness and reflection into that after, and, you know, be humble and apologise and say, I'm sorry if there was some projection there, I was feeling a lot and I reflected. And all lessons in growth each time, I feel, as well, reflecting on the process. But really it's about coming back to the inner child wisdom, the wonder child within us all, as well as the wounded one, just to really embody that, embody her presence.
Yeah, and what you're making me think of when you're saying that and talking about the inner child is what you said at the beginning about your definition of pleasure being in your truth. And we know that kids just speak their mind. They are the ultimate truth sayers, and not only do they speak their truth, but they also express their truth, their emotions, without much filter. Like, especially younger kids, they want to cry, they want to laugh, they want to run around screaming, they just will. And I was working in a nursery for a little bit, and I saw how much that natural expression of emotions was being like trained out of them. Like, be quiet, stop running around, stop laughing, sit up straight. All of these things, like, they do yoga poses all the time, and just like natural stretches in their body when they're feeling uncomfortable, and they're told, no, like, sit with your legs crossed, sit up straight, stop doing all of that. And it's sad, actually, that we're trying to get kids to behave, and I don't blame anyone working in the nursery, because it's a handful, I get it, but we need to find a better way, I think, to allow children to express their truth while still being acceptable in society, so that we can grow up as teenagers, importantly, knowing how to express our emotions without just feeling like no one understands me, I've just got to shut it all in. And it just creates more and more pain, as we see happening all the time.
I just wanted to echo what you shared there and illuminate this idea of shame, and that that is the reason why it's so hard to return to that wild expression, because I'm not here to preach that, you know, it's easy to express wildly and not project, because it's very simple to say that, but in action and in reality it can be layered and difficult for us to give ourselves that permission to even know how to surrender. And it's been a real journey for me, and I think it's remembering and being kind to ourselves that is our upbringing, that is the collective wounding and conditioning, that we are all on a journey to healing. And that's why it can feel uncomfortable when we first start doing it, and other people might find that uncomfortable to meet us there. If they haven't met that within themselves, they're going to be like, whoa, what is this person doing? Like, it's out of the norm.
And then you get shamed even more, so like, my friends don't understand me. And even as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about my own childhood, and so much love to my parents, obviously doing their best, but there was definitely a thing of trying to make me strong and trying to make me like a capable person in society, but sometimes that was a bit misguided, and it came out as saying I was weak or overly sensitive or pathetic, and those words still stick with me now when I go to cry, and I'm like, am I allowed? Like, it's kind of like, am I going to get in trouble for feeling? And I'm wondering if you had a similar experience growing up. Did you have any of those kind of getting in trouble for expressing pain?
I mean, I got in a lot of trouble, but not with my parents.
Yeah.
So, because my childhood was quite different in the sense that my parents were quite far removed from my life, and I was kind of going out and acting in a very reckless way, and I didn't really have any boundaries. So, not in the sense of that, because it wasn't witnessed enough to be kind of then told off for.
Yeah. Okay.
But I definitely feel out and about in the public. You know, I was going clubbing quite young, and I would get really drunk and then just start expressing all these emotions. Like, I remember crying my eyes out and screaming, and it's like, wow, if I had that awareness then, or anyone around me did, it's like, you know, even alcohol can be a medicine in some situations. Like, that tincture was showing me something that wanted to be met. But it wasn't. It was really met with, oh gosh, like, you know, Rakhee gets so crazy and mental when she's drunk, like, what, you know, this isn't socially acceptable. It's kind of like, how can we scoop her up off the streets? Like, someone get her home. So, yeah, I think I was told off in the kind of wider public scale kind of sense.
Yeah.
So it's a similar, I guess, energy in a very different context, but definitely I don't feel that my wild expression was met with understanding, and that's okay. You know, how could they have compassion when they don't understand it? And that's the importance, I think, of bringing back this education, all this work that you're doing and that we're sharing with the world, is to really re-educate so that shame can, we can break that ancestral trauma, break that pattern, and, you know, pave the way for a new path of healing, reframing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Please. We all need to do this. Yeah, what came through for me when you were sharing that about kind of screaming drunk on the street is this thing of, we often fear going into our pain because it might break us. And that's definitely a reality for me when I'm sober. And I think sometimes it takes, I don't know what it is about alcohol or other plant medicines. For me, it was definitely cannabis. It took intoxicating myself to be able to get into the pain and really see it for what it was, because otherwise I did really feel like it would break me if I looked at, talking particularly about trauma here, going into that so deeply can be so hard, and like there's a fear that you might not come back. And I'm wondering what your experience has been with leaning into pain, and how you've done that perhaps sober, and also your experience with using or connecting with different plant spirits to help you access that level of pain so that you don't break.
Yeah, that's another really beautiful question. Yeah, just immediately really honouring the plant spirits.
Thank God.
Literally. What a gift they are. And I'll definitely share both. I just want to start by really honouring, there's a reason that plant medicine is becoming so mainstream, is the first word, but also so talked about, and so just celebrated, and all of the different healing miracles, you know, that these plant spirits have had. Again, there's a reason that it's such a hot topic of conversation, and that is because they are so powerful in helping us and supporting us with that healing. My go-to is actually to share about my experience of the plants first. I know you asked the question the other way around, but that's what's coming through me. Because to be honest, when I first started doing plant medicine, so working with mushroom medicine and cannabis, ayahuasca, bufo, it really helped to open me up and to give me the tools to explore my pain on a deeper level. And I think it's simply because these plants, they don't project because they're plants. And with coaches, therapies, like it's still quite in the mind unless that person has also done this kind of alternative holistic route. It can be quite clinical, and that kind of rigidity, it doesn't match to our souls, to our mystical experience of life. And I think what the plant spirits bring in is they literally show us, like for me it's like conversing with God, and they really saved me because I wasn't able, especially having experienced trauma, to access those higher states until that point. After doing a lot of integration, I mean, you know, I'm still open to working with plant medicine and use it sparingly, but I don't really feel like, you know, I need it anymore to access that. I can access it sober. And I think that's where the integration is so vital and key, because I now see the magic in life everywhere. Like I can feel that tree's presence. I can feel spirits talking to me when the wind is blowing, when I'm gazing at a beautiful flower. And I think it's called, I think Eckhart Tolle said he tried, I think it was LSD or mushrooms, just to see what everyone was talking about. And he said he gets it because it's a doorway to perception. But ultimately the goal is being able to have that perception most of the time or all of the time. And that is the best way to describe it. They're doorways, and what a beautiful gift that, you know, God has literally provided us with on this land. Why else would it be there, really? So, yeah, that's definitely helped me to lean into my suffering and feel more safe in that, because it's given this anchor, this rooting of pleasure, or this comforting spirit that's kind of helping me to guide through. And I just immediately trust it because it's a plant, and I think we have certain connections to people or humans or triggers that just aren't present when it's a plant.
Yeah.
And that's the real magic and gift of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's hard to remember what it was like before that. Before that, I would say it was really just suffering. Like I'd be doing these plants a disservice if I didn't mention how much they have supported me.
Yeah.
And like I say, like I only did ayahuasca once, you know, years ago. And I'm not, some people do it every year. It's not about a judgment on how often you should do it, but I personally haven't needed it. From one night, I sat with the medicine, one night, you know, most people do 3 to 4, and it's like, I guess I'm sharing that because there can be this depiction of plant medicine being really like overused or avoidance or, you know, a shortcut, but actually when it's used in an integrative way, you really don't need much of it. It's more about the intention and the space setting and using that and implementing it in your everyday life. So yeah, I think my experience before plant medicine was pretty much suffering. If I'm being completely transparent and honest.
I relate, yeah.
Even when I first started working with a spiritual coach, I had already done ayahuasca, bufo, mushrooms, worked with Santa Maria in a ceremonial way, and that allowed me to drop in faster. Like I had less barriers of resistance, which meant that in 3 months I had the most deepest, profound healing of my life. And she even shared with me, and she had never even worked with plant medicine. She said she'd never gone that deep with someone that fast.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I'd already had all these openings, and that just sedimented it. And I wasn't doing any plant medicine for those 3 months, but because I had had that experience and insight and door of perception, it was much easier for me to drop in and not have all of this cynicism, resistance, because I knew deep within my soul that ultimately we're all love and energy, and I had directly experienced that. So I think that just served as such a strong anchor.
Yeah.
For the rest of it.
Yeah, no, it's really beautifully shared, and something I want to highlight I want to highlight that you said there is it's not about going to these medicines for like over and over and over again, and that's definitely what I did, but I've since learned things. I'll share a bit more about that in a moment, but just to highlight what you're saying, is that it's the integration of that experience then, which then allows you to lean into your suffering or your pain when you're sober, because the plant medicines teach you how to do it, and they take you often, especially ayahuasca, so deeply into your pain, but hold you so tightly through the whole experience that you're like, oh shit, I can access deeper levels of hell than I ever thought was possible. And I know that the medicine, I know that love, I know that God, whatever you want to call it, is always with me. And then from that place you can dive deeper sober. For me, it was very much, for years I didn't understand no one ever really explained that to me, to be fair, that plant medicine isn't the solution. Like, don't just smoke loads of weed to numb yourself. What my teacher actually said to me at some point was, just try smoking a little bit less and see what happens. And I think what you said about using it sparingly, because when we're just like smoking loads of cannabis all the time, or mushrooms or whatever, there's no chance to actually integrate that experience and learn how to experience what they're showing you in the present moment. Whereas and I'm talking going from smoking like a couple of grams a day to like maybe 0.3 once a week. And when I was in that space with cannabis, it was incredible what she showed me. Like, for years it was just numbing out and watching Netflix, and then all of a sudden cannabis was like mushrooms. Like, and it was just incredible. So yes, just big up to the plant spirits. I'm just tooting my horn, but it has just been so crucial. And I'm wondering, so after experiencing trauma, as you've shared, how have you found feeling pleasure in your body? Has plant medicine been a part of helping you to find the pleasure in your body again, or has there been other tools?
I think it was very hard for me to access pleasure, because there was so much pain and bodily memory in this vessel, in this body. And it's just made discovering pleasure all the more sweeter. And I know that that's the gift of trauma, because, I know that they say that you know when you've healed something, when you're grateful for it because of the gift, and you would actually rather have relived it again because of the gift. And that's exactly how I feel. Like, it's given me so much, like a golden key that I don't find it rarely in people unless they've also been through, a trauma. And most of us have, really, but I guess when you meet people that have really managed to own it and integrate it, the key comes. Like, every shadow contains a gift. And what helped me was finding community first and foremost. I mean, as you know, it's a big part of my life. I live in one, and I always have, that can really just meet you with authentic sharing and hold space for where you're at, because that induced pleasure, because it induced natural release or alchemization, whatever you want to call it. I remember I went to a Hare Krishna farm in Australia, and it was just full of yogis and plant medicine people, and everyone was really beautiful there, and someone just held my hand and was like, "What are you grateful for?" And I just burst into tears, and that was the start of my spiritual journey, my awakening, my insight into how other people live in this more open-hearted way, I guess, more authentic sharing, because before, my circles had been very much about drinking heavily and smoking and going out and numbing, like you said, numbing pain, avoiding it. And all of a sudden I was with these people that were looking me dead on in the eye and being so present with me. And I think for me, that is really the truth of when things started shifting, because that's what allowed me to be open to things like plant medicine and to meditate more and yoga and all of those other yummy, juicy things. I think our environment counts for a lot, and there must have been a part of me that knew it, because I ended up there. Part of me wanted to go travelling and explore and kept just saying, "Hey, you need something," but I didn't know what it was. And that journey of exploring took me to this farm outside of Byron Bay, when I was about 21 or 22, and I'm now 29, so that was like 8 years ago, of really awakening. Like, I'd had insight into these things before, but that was like a real shift of something. I saw something that I didn't see before. And I think that started to help me to relax more in my nervous system, feel more comfortable, to open up. And meeting David, my partner, was a big part of that awakening of pleasure, moving from that state of trauma and pain into pleasure, excitement and relaxation. and one of the techniques that he used mainly with me was body work. So actual yoni healing using physical touch to release where there had been a lot of tension and traumatic memory. And it was like nothing I've ever experienced before. Yeah. I mean, the first couple of months of my relationship were just body work. Yeah. And I think that probably counts for a lot. Physically as well as energetically releasing the memories and trauma that was held in this area really opened something that brought me more into pleasure. So that conscious present connection is so important. Authentic sharing and witnessing each other as we are without trying to fix or judge or shame.
And I think something that you probably experienced with David and I experienced as well after having sexual trauma is that pleasure is just really hard to feel, and we were sharing a little bit about this earlier, how there's a lot of shame around not being able to feel pleasure and not being able to enjoy sex, and just noticing sensations in your body. For me, it got to a point where just every touch around my yoni felt painful, even if it was a nice, a nice touch, a gentle touch. It was just like, don't fucking touch me. How was your journey in a bit more detail, I suppose, with, if you don't mind sharing, with going from that kind of don't fucking touch me, if that was your experience, and just feeling anything in this area as pain, to reframing sensations as pleasure, or getting to a point where you can feel that touch as pleasurable?
Yeah, another really beautiful question. I really resonate with that, first of all, the don't fucking touch me.
Yeah.
And actually the soft touch was much harder to receive than hard touch. I preferred it hard and a bit violent, because that was kind of my comfort zone. So it took a lot to soften into that, and I would say that's a big part of it, just softening, which is a very energetic process that I've had to learn. But again, it's about having David there to support me, and in general I think that is why there is a calling for us to step up as healers, as coaches, as shamans, plant medicine teachers, because having that space held for me is literally what allowed me to transition. Having David touch it gently, and then feeling my physical visceral reaction, and then going around reflecting, and then trying again. But I would say the consistency, as well as the safe space, is really important, and the most potent way for it to really have enough, I guess, just nourishment and grounding to actually shift into something else. I think we were probably meeting it most evenings in those first months, and I think that's what really helped me to drop in. And again, if I was doing plant medicine journeys at the time, specifically setting an intention, intention is so powerful, which is the sole reason why someone might take loads of mushrooms on a night out and also drink loads and just be like, so wavy.
Yeah.
And someone else might take them and be like, whoa, I just had a conversation with God.
Yeah. And
that is the power of intention and belief. And I just want to share that actually as a bit of a side note, that having respect for these plant teachers is so important, because I do meet just as many people that still think these things are party drugs and escapism. And if that's your belief, that's absolutely fine. That's what it's going to give you.
Yeah, that's going to be your experience.
The mushrooms and these plants will only show you what you are ready for and what you are open to. And there's a real respect involved in that, because if someone's meeting it with a certain energy, you're going to get that. And that's fine, but just know that, know that you're making that conscious choice to engage in it in a certain way.
No, that's a really beautiful and important point to bring in. I just wanted to track back a little bit though to what you were saying before. For you were saying the key from switching these painful sensations to pleasurable was to soften into them. And what I'm assuming, because it was similar for me, is what was practically very key to that was making myself feel really safe. So whether that was with a partner and really trusting them, or just setting up the space for myself if I was doing my own self-pleasure practice to feel really safe and talk to my yoni and let her know that I'm not going to put fingers inside or my cervical wand inside unless I really feel her say that to me.
Yeah.
So that safety, that trust, and the breath, actually, as well. Is there any other tips, like practical tips that you've got around softening?
I think definitely using the breath to kind of go in and through the sensation. So I often do the triangle breath, so like just a downwards triangle on my womb, yoni, and really breathing into her. And that's kind of like physically and actively softening. And I think don't be fooled by our intuition, because if we're not in the mind and someone says, see how much you can soften, part of us gets that.
Yeah.
Part of us really understands energetically, okay, yeah, I'm holding on, it's really softened.
Yeah.
And actually it's funny because it's like that whole thing about teaching how to let go. How do you do it? Well, you just do it. You just let go.
Yeah.
You either do it or you don't. And we can intellectualize these things, but ultimately it's looking at how much is just avoidance from actually just really going there. And I think I would just share as a disclaimer or just something to be aware of is that it doesn't feel comfortable to soften. And I think that is so important to remember when we're first engaging in these practices. It's not supposed to be comfortable, because I think, again, soften has connotations of, a bit of a feminine flow and a really beautiful, airy fairy, floopy doopy whoopy. But it is not. It's like, and it can feel icky.
Yeah.
It feels really icky, especially for me and anyone that's experienced trauma. I'm sure you can relate. It's not comfortable to soften. And I think that is where the crux is, or the turning point, that it isn't like necessarily that complicated, but there has to be a persistence and a consistency in showing up to that ickiness or discomfort at first when you practice it, taking your time. Every time you might go a little bit more, or you might go really deep one time and then back into convulsion the next. And again, coming back to what we said at the start, meeting every single moment with so much presence and truth where you can. And sometimes that is holding ourselves in that discomfort and our pain, and that's it. There's nothing else to that moment but just full acceptance.
Yeah, and I just, for anyone who maybe doesn't understand, I'd love to expand a bit on why it's so hard to soften. I think I really relate to what you're saying as well, when I didn't actually start my healing journey around sex until I started to have like softer, more kind of making love sex with my ex-partner. Because before that, it had always been like, whether it was traumatic or consensual, or it all gets very complicated, but it was all very hard and rough. And I found that was so much easier then for me to just like bury my head in the pillows or whatever it was and completely dissociate and just step into another realm and just like, whatever the fuck's happening to my body, it's just so overly stimulating that it was easy to exit my mind in that moment. And I really relate to that thing of, okay, when I started to make love to my ex-partner and things started to slow down and my heart opened, and I feel full body chills now just thinking about it, but that's when it was like, am I being present with the sensations of pleasure and trying to do that, and then being like, oh my god, there's so much pain in here, like my heart is breaking, my yoni's clenching up, like stop loving me so much and touching me so softly, because when you do that, it is heartbreaking almost. It's like it's hard to escape the body at that point. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Softness is hard because it's less distracting. I think that's what I'm trying to say. That focusing in on yourself and breathing and just being with yourself is so hard because it can feel so uncomfortable. Thank
you for sharing that. It deeply resonates. let it go and we can't hide when we soften, and that could be incredibly vulnerable and heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But also so expansive.
Yeah.
Like you say, heart opening. The heart has to break in order for it to open. And it's, remembering that fine line between pain and pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. So something, I guess we've spoken a lot about pain and doing all this work around like shadow work and healing and why that's so important. I've had a lot of trauma in my life, pretty much just sexually, and I've found that over the last few years I've definitely been quite obsessive around wanting to heal that and to be able to have like amazing pleasurable sex, and so just constantly going like back into my womb, back into my yoni, and like focusing on that so much. And we know that what we put our attention on grows. So that's one aspect of it. But yeah, where have you found perhaps addiction to shadow work or healing trauma in your life, and has it been a problem? Has it not?
Yeah, it's such an important topic, and to be completely honest, when I started healing in more of a present moment way, which is, I think it's similar to something called Gestalt therapy or Gestalt. That one's quite a mainstream modality of just being very present. I naturally loosened my addiction to shadow work, because I think Westernized psychology has become so brittle and stale because it's very rigid and it's rooted in this clinical conditioning. So it's like, when I first started going to therapy, it became an obsession because it's like, you are going here every week because of this shadow, because of this wound, because of this trauma that you've gone through. And it's like, it doesn't help, because this belief that it helps us, solely at least, in my opinion, is very rooted in the neuroses of our mind. And in most cases, it actually amplifies it and makes it worse, because then, like you say, we're trying really hard.
Yeah.
And that energy of trying is the opposite of pleasure, it's the opposite of presence and being in that flow state.
Well, it's holding on to pain, isn't it, almost in a lot of ways? You're trying so hard to heal and just putting all your attention on that you're actually holding on to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's such a breakthrough realization. And when I first started working in a more holistic way with plant medicine, with mentors, coaches, guides that were able to meet me in presence and then help me heal from that way, I naturally was not holding on to the shadow work as much, and I loosened that addiction. Because the reality is that sometimes I show up to a session, this one lady who really, really changed my life, and I would say, I think I'm feeling a lot, I'm not feeling right, I'm feeling a lot of pain, and instead of, the kind of westernized, very clinical, conditioned way of responding, which is, okay, let's explore that, why do you think you don't feel good? She just went, are you? Are you really? And I was a bit taken aback at first. I was like, what do you mean, you're questioning me?
Yes, I am.
And then she guided me into my chest, into my heart, into my body. And then I went, I'm actually feeling very relaxed. And she was like, there you go. And from that place, I'll never forget that moment. It was one of those moments, like light bulb moment or transformative. I was like, wow, we create so many stories in our head. And actually, any kind of therapy that keeps us stuck in our head is doing us a disservice in terms of what you're sharing about that addiction to shadow work, because it isn't enough balance with actually finding, even if we think we don't, we find it hard to feel pleasure, even all those times that I remember it being hard, I bet you there were also many times where I had a moment, even if it's just a split second of pleasure and joy. We've all seen it when we're crying and then we turn into a laugh. It's very light, and we need to bring that lightness in to help us navigate the dark. Otherwise, we're kind of helpless. It's a pretty dreary path. Healing doesn't have to be this very serious shadow work way, because like you say, that does induce addiction and an attachment to it. We're holding on, and if we can just let go from that and accept that in every moment it's very transient, and not create too much of a story about, okay, I've experienced this trauma, so this is my experience of life and that's it, it's fixed. It's like, no, if you're really real with yourself, the truth is changing in every moment, especially if we're present with that. So I think inviting in that presence to feeling simultaneously, sometimes maybe your heart is breaking and you feel pain in your heart, but you also feel a big release in your feet and some lighter sensations and tingly sensations in your fingertips, and that's where somatic work is so powerful.
Yeah.
It gets us to viscerally experience that.
Yeah, I think that's, a few things are coming through around that. The phrase "take the darkness lightly" was a big kind of stopper in my addiction to shadow work and healing. So I was just like, and also just to like enjoy the fruit of your shadow work as well. Like if you have experienced a trauma, I'm sure you're doing everything that you can to heal that and to not feel the way that you're feeling anymore, which is completely fair enough. But along your journey, you are going to feel a little bit better and a little bit better. And you don't have to just keep diving into the trauma. You can just actually enjoy the slightly better state that you're feeling in. Another thing I wanted to share as well is the thing of feeling sensations in your body. So maybe you've got pain in one part and pleasure in another part at the same time. Or maybe you've created a story around the sensation, like there's such a big one with anxiety and excitement that was a game changer for me with tackling anxiety, was that realizing, okay, my body's feeling like excited, and even that terminology, so my heart's beating fast, my breath is quickened, my palms are feeling a bit sweaty. So therefore, my mind scans around and looks for something to be anxious about, and if it can't see anything, it starts creating a story about something I must be stressing about. And often the reality is that I'm actually just really excited, my heart's beating fast, I'm a bit sweaty, like, like my breath maybe quickens a little bit. And if I can, in that moment, just be like, okay, I'm not actually stressed about this thing or this story that I'm creating, I'm actually just really excited about whatever it may be, then you switch that so quickly and just change the sensations in your body. But we do have to be careful of bypassing as well and pretending that a sensation is excitement when actually maybe it is anxiety. So it comes back to, again, what you're saying at the beginning about just being in your truth, and that's how we find pleasure. Really honouring what is true in this moment and listening to your body, not your mind, about that sometimes.
Definitely. It's a good easy tool to just ask, is this in my mind or my body? Because usually when it's in the mind, it's an anxious thought, and when it's in the body, it's an intuitive sensation. And in my experience, it's just so helpful to just discharge the energy and kind of feel it instead of trying to analyze it. And sometimes the mind wants to unravel and we give it that validation, but ultimately it's presence, awareness, and intuition. Intuition is the only thing that is going to give us the confidence to know whether that is anxiety or fear or excitement or whatever. And there's so many tools we can use to help us strengthen intuition, but it's a really key part of us, of educating everyone as well to know how to access those states.
And we're talking a lot about bringing or being addicted to shadow work and sort of inviting in that pain. And I just want to kind of focus a bit more on not the shadow work side of that, but the maybe before you start your healing journey and continuing to invite in pain. For me, I had sexual trauma and then continued to consent basically to more sexual trauma because it felt familiar, it felt just like what was meant to be, but I think there's also a higher mysterious element to why we keep inviting trauma in. And for me, the realization has been that there's lessons in that trauma, and until you learn them, you're probably going to keep repeating that because it feels familiar and comfortable. What's your experience been with that?
Yeah, I definitely feel that it's true. Let me just tune in. Yeah, I mean, it took, I actually think it requires sometimes very extreme shifts in our environment to kick us out of that addiction or that pattern that we've been repeating and replaying out. Yeah, traveling has been a massive part of that. And I didn't have loads of money. I'd go with a bag and work there and do massage for £1 a minute on the side of the street, or $1 in Australia.
Nice.
And I entered bikini competitions to earn money, and then I got a job in corporate. But we're very creative when we're in that process. But it really did take, and actually the first partner I went with, it was a very abusive relationship, but it was the biggest gift. And he was so tough love with me. Like, he did not get any of this kind of trauma stuff, and he was just like, you know, and if I was feeling bad to go into work and stuff, he'd be like, well, what are you going to do? Like, you've got to eat, like, you're going to be on the streets, like, it doesn't matter what you're feeling, you need to. And again, this is where the balance comes in, because an element of that tough love, albeit at times it was a bit too tough, but it did give me a kick up behind me, and it allowed me to end up moving across the world to Australia with him, where we parted, or more like I kind of ran away. And then I was just in Melbourne on my own, you know, and I had to find my own feet. And I think that's the biggest gift that it gave me. And it really did take that extreme environment shift to be able to re-find my feet and to start again. It took a shattering. And I always recommend that actually to people, because breakups are hard, and heartbreak is hard, and trauma is hard. And it doesn't have to be, if we're kind of, you know, doing what's good for us, so we have a choice how long that hardness lasts. But I definitely think switching up environments, you can't heal from a trauma whilst remaining in a situation that fuels your trauma. So environment for me is a really big key player. Like, get out there. I know many spiritual teachers that have been homeless before they came into great wealth. It's like, how far are you willing to take this? In terms of, like, I'm not saying come homeless. Do what you need to do, and sometimes that is removing everything, stripping it all away, giving up your belongings, and just retreating and finding yourself from that place of not knowing. So I think that's what really supported me to pattern interrupt.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, traveling was at first for me running away from my problems, but I eventually found the solution to my problems within that. And it's making me think of the phrase, I'm sorry, I don't know where to credit this from, but when you pray, move your feet. So you're in pain and you're asking for help, but you've got to take action as well. And that can be so bloody hard when you are in pain, and that's where things like community and support come in. And if you don't have that community and support, you've got to find something, even if it's the smallest little glimpse of light, it's the sun shining in your face, your dog, or just looking at someone's dog in the park, that gives you that spark to move your feet and remember why you're here, and remember that you can come through this pain, and the human existence isn't just suffering. You can come through the trauma, you can experience pleasure, it's all available to you. You just don't limit yourself. Which again is so hard when your nervous system feels unsafe because you've experienced trauma. So a lot of what we're saying probably sounds quite easy, but 8 years for you, I think it's been like 7 years for me, like trudging through. And just to kind of close this up on a lighter note, I suppose we've touched on it here and there, but in that trudging through the trauma and the healing and the pain, what I've realised is so important, which we were talking about earlier, often gets a lot of, trying to think of a better word than a lot of shit, but is love and light and pleasure, and focusing on that side of healing. Not just focusing on healing the pain, but also focusing on actively bringing pleasure into your life. If it's not possible for you to do that on a sexual level yet, then it's not possible at this time, that's fine. But how else do you bring pleasure into your life, perhaps when sexual pleasure isn't or wasn't available to you?
I think, you know, enjoying a cup of tea and like learning how to taste the flavour of that, so that, you know, then you can begin to taste the flavour of your yoni.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really good point. If it's not available to you, then what is available to you? You know, do you enjoy cooking? Make a nice meal. And if you don't enjoy anything, if that's where you're at, then just try it, you know, like taste it. I did a share the other day that life is so much like a fruit tree. And if we spend too long like deciding which one to pick and what to try, they'll all fall to the floor and become rotten. So it's with that analogy, like just taste it and see how you go. And sometimes pleasure is literally giggling with friends and being silly. And even if you're in the stage of going out, like going out and having fun and noticing that you're actually having fun in that one moment. So yeah, I think for me it was definitely, because yeah, no one would have ever said I was depressed or healing from trauma before I found this path. I was very extroverted and a real party girl, and I loved having fun, and I still love that. And I still believe in all of that Ram Dass wisdom, which is that we don't really change. We just soften and grow and we get more awareness, but our essence doesn't change too much. And I'm still that Rakhee that loved going out and being, you know, the life of the party. It's just that I'm holding and loving myself a lot more through that, and I don't need to get blackout drunk and, you know, just, I have a lot more joy in the little moments now without anything. So I think before I was finding pleasure in just having fun and going out, and I was still expressing even though it wasn't met with much understanding. But people loved me for different reasons. And it's all the same thing really, just different shades of it and different stages. So yeah, I think it's beautiful to notice the ways in which you're having fun in your life.
Yeah, so just to really emphasize the two things that you said there. One, so basically what I'm showing is how to find pleasure even when it feels really hard. So the main thing that resonates with what we've been talking about a lot is coming back to perhaps your truth of your inner child, and just remembering, okay, what did she enjoy? And even if you don't enjoy that anymore for whatever reason, there's just been too much trauma and pain, just remembering that there was a time that your inner child, for me it was just like dance, just loved dancing, like couldn't get enough of it. And during my kind of like trauma phase, wasn't dancing at all, just like completely stepped back from that. And bringing that back into my life has helped me heal so much quicker, because just always the expression of emotion, there's so many amazing things about dance, but the most important thing about it was just the fact that I loved it as a child, and I still love it. And the other thing I just wanted to share as well is the more basic thing of just coming back to your senses. So you might not be able to feel orgasmic sensation in your yoni, but you might, even if it's like a hand massage, that's often why I start with my clients when they can't touch, is just to massage your hands and just see how that feels, because it's quite a normal place to touch things, so it can be a really good place to start. Or enjoying the sense of your tea, the way it tastes. And I remember a time for me where the honest truth was that for years was that the only thing I actually ever wanted to do was smoke a joint, and everything else was secondary to that. It was kind of like, fine, I'll do that. Can I get high first, or can we make sure that I can definitely get high straight away afterwards? And that's really sad for me to say, actually, because I traveled the world, I saw incredible places, had a beautiful love with my ex-partner as well, and still, honestly, looking back, I feel like it's all marred by this thing of like, all these experiences were great, but actually the only thing I really wanted was to get high. And a changing point in that was when my teacher said to me, okay, if that's all you want to do, be really present with that. So instead of just like mindlessly smoking and watching Netflix and just like zonking myself out, emotionally numbing, just try, he said to me, just one time, smoke about half of what you normally smoke. Feel the sensation of that smoke coming into your body and out. Maybe just listen to music, have your eyes closed, and feel the high coming on as well. That shifted so much for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, and just a very, very last question. What, now that you're on the other side of, or not completely on the other side, I guess we never are, but in a really good place it feels with your healing journey, what are just some things that you just love to do? What brings you pleasure now?
Dancing.
Yeah.
I love dancing. Singing. I said the other day to my friends, like, sing like nobody's watching, and she responded with, no, sing like everybody's watching.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think singing loudly and unapologetically and expressing myself poetically. I love writing. I love reading. I love meditating. I get pleasure out of that. I love having sex with my partner, amazing embodied sex. Eating ice cream, swimming in the ocean, going traveling, seeing new places, coffee shops, connecting with friends. Yeah, all of it.
Yeah. Okay, so if you're struggling for ideas, try one of those.
A long walk in nature.
Yeah, there's so many things. Yeah, and I think just the way you listed off a load of things there is just so, you could keep going and going forever with the beautiful things in this world. They are there, they are present, if you can be present with them.
Yeah, definitely. Playing with Willow, my beautiful dog. The list could go on.
Yeah, right, let's stop there. We could be here forever. It's such a beautiful conversation to go into.
Yeah.
The wisdom you've shared has been incredible. It's been beautiful to see you in this way and just hear you flow and speak in such an authentic, inspiring way. So thank you, sister, and I'm so just delighted to have you in my life.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Would you like that? Okay, everyone, thank you so much for listening to this conversation. I really hope it's helped in some way. And if anything's come up that's really difficult, we're both here to support you. You know a lot already about what I do and how I support, so I'd love Rakhee to share about her incredible offerings. It's really special, so listen up.
Thank you everyone for listening. I hope you gained some new perspectives on healing and ways in which you can embody your pleasure in relation to trauma and pain too. And essentially that is what I support other beings with. So from my own experiences of healing, as well as training in somatic trauma release and holistic life coaching, I support beings to find that freedom within and connect to all of their sensations, pleasure, pain, grief, anger, rage, and really allowing my clients to alchemize that in real time, to viscerally feel the shifts from within. And I also facilitate circles where I do group ceremonies to facilitate authentic sharing and somatic release in that sense. So yeah, I'd love to hear about whether that resonates, and feel free to get in contact, get in touch if you have any questions, and yeah, look forward to connecting more with you all. Thank you.
And I just want to emphasise, if you are in Brighton, the events that Rakhee facilitates are powerful, beautiful. There's so much to them, especially the circles has just been an incredible space. I really don't have the words to describe how much that community, we've talked about it a lot in the podcast, but the sense of community and sharing with your sisters and brothers together has just been incredible. So thank you for that space, and I really invite everyone to at least check it out if you're in the vicinity.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, thank you so much everyone. Have a beautiful day. Goodbye.